That was amazing. What? Oh, the end shot is so cool. Oh, wow, okay. This is serious stuff now. This is actually quite bad. What's up everyone, my name is Francois, welcome back to another episode of Filmmaker Reacts. This is a series where we take a look at some of the online content, see what's really good and what we could learn from, and see what's not so very good and would have done differently. Today we're taking a look at a music video by DragonForce for the song called To Oblivion. I've actually worked with DragonForce on the release for that album, Extreme Power Metal, doing some green screen compositing. And I know that at that time they were working on shooting this video on a green screen with cameras on robotized arm, which is really cool. As always, I've never actually watched the video I'm about to react to, so this is my genuine reaction. Judging from what I've seen on social media, I know that there's a lot of things to take in, so I thought this episode of Filmmaker React was the perfect occasion to finally check this out and take it in for the first time. So let's not waste any more time and let's get into it.
When the lights have turned to gray.
Wow, this is actually off green screen. Yeah, you can kind of tell, but it's actually really good. I love it already. I love the Tron vibe.
Seasons change. We all still feel the same as we stand before the world.
Oh wow, okay. This is serious stuff now. Yeah, that's the DragonForce I was expecting. Yes. Giant Herman Lee in the city. No way! That motorcycle is so cool. Wow, the big city is amazing. Like Godzilla, isn't it? Oh, the DragonForce track. Wow, they're not messing around here. They actually did an amazing job so far. I love it. I must say, the compositing is obviously like green screen. You can tell it's all VFX, but it's really good. What? There's an actual car chase. How long did this take? Whoa! All clear. That's awesome. The Captain Wave. Yeah, that's classic. I love it. That was amazing. What? Oh, the end shot is so cool. Wow, okay. So I've just watched it for the first time ever. There's so much to unpick. There's so much to analyze. It's so cool. I was expecting something like rough around the edges because, you know, it's a bit of a piss take. I was expecting something a bit like almost badly done for the joke, almost like one of those zombie movie, like it's so bad that it's good. But actually, from a filmmaker and VFX artist standpoint, it's amazing. It's surprisingly amazing. It's top notch. You can tell there's a bit of a storyboard. Everything makes sense. That's actually awesome. So now let's go back into it and take a look at some of my favorite shots. Oh, I love this intro shot. The neon lights flickering. Bear in mind, I'm expecting everything but the band members to be CGI. Even the floor. The floor is definitely 100% CGI. Look at the reflection, like here. It's perfect. The neon goes all the way down to the floor. It stops in a realistic way, and then its reflection on the floor just fades out and feathers smoothly. This is top notch. One of the hardest things to composite when you do green screen work is long hair, because there's so many details, and you'll see that if you work in Photoshop and you try to do a selection of the hair, it's very hard to do realistic and a good compositing and a good selection. So far, I must say, it doesn't look too bad. What normally tends to happen is when you try and make a long hair selection from a green screen composition, all the fuzzy hair and the hairs that sort of like hover around the head gets cut out and you end up with hard edges. And Herman is like got notoriously long hair as well. One other thing I have to point out is the lighting is very good. They knew exactly what they were shooting in advance. I'm guessing they had a shot list, and they knew that for that shot here, for example, the lighting would come from the front and from the side. So they didn't use any backlight, which makes sense. Everything comes from the front. And again, about keying out long hair with green screen work. Look at that. This looks really believable. That what normally would happen is instead of having quite smooth edges and, you know, like fluffy hair, you'd have a hard edge, almost like wet hair. This is not happening here. This is really good. So I wonder if the vehicles are actually 100% CGI, because at some point you see Sam on a motorcycle, so he would have had to be leaning on something. It would just be easier to have like a fake bike on top of which you add the neon lights and stuff. I don't know, let's have a look. Right, so one thing even better, look at that shot. Did you see it? The light flickers on the background, which is most likely CGI, and on the face of the singer. So most likely what they would have done is have the light flicker on set on the singer, and then match that level of intensity with keyframes in the lighting on the CGI background, which is the clever thing to do. Sometimes people just don't have the time to do all the details and take care of all the lighting, flickers and stuff. Here, they've done a really good job.
as we stand before the world.
I love that. You think it's gonna be like some sort of power ballad. You have the intro that's quite slow and nice melodies and stuff. The neon Tokyo setup takes you to like some sort of esoteric place, and you think, oh, it's gonna be like a nice slow motion shots and stuff. And then some kind of robot comes with big guns and blows everything up. I love that. One thing I must say, it's always on the border of hilarious or bad. I think here it's more on the hilarious side, which was intended, I guess, is whenever you have a story happening in a music video and you involve the band members, very often you can tell the bad acting from a mile away, and it's just funnier when it's the band members and they go like... Now, take a look at this 3D model. Look at the level of details. Like again, this is the kind of levels of details you can expect from a movie where they spend years and years developing the whole thing. We have time to go back and forth between production, pre-production, and so on, just to make sure that they have the detail right and perfect. Over here, usually when you do a music video, you've got a few months at most. If you do anything big budget, you'd have probably about a couple of weeks of pre-production, a few days of shooting, and if you're lucky, you've got a month of post-production. Anything longer than that, and you have the record label phoning you, being like, come on, we have a release date on that day, we need to start the PR campaign, sometimes up to 2 months before the release date, so you have pressure on you. This is a kind of thing where either they found a really high detail model online already made, which is likely, and you buy it and it's all good, but if they did all the texturing and modeling themselves, that's like weeks of work just for one model, and I know they reuse it all throughout, but it's just one model. One 3D model. It's a lot of work for something that you can get away with not putting at the forefront too much. You know, a bit of movement, motion blur, you get away with the lower details. Here, look at the grunge texture here. The highlights are top notch. The glow just sells the whole thing even better. It just makes it look so realistic. It's just perfect. This is probably one of my favorite shots. I don't know why, there's just something that I really like. This is such a good idea to have them as Godzilla-like giants in the city playing their instruments. I just love it. And for once, whether they used a pre-made Metropolitan pack from Video Copilot or not, you can't really tell because it's all high detail, futuristic 3D models of like towers and buildings and stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of the Kid Bash products, but you can't tell it's been made in Element 3D on After Effects. And whether or not this has been done there, it's not the problem. It's just that at least you can't tell from a mile away that it was a pre-made pack that everyone has used on the internet. It could have been done on Cinema 4D, on Blender, on 3ds Max, no one knows. The point is you're not being distracted by something you've already seen before. Your attention is 100% on what's happening. And that's very important, very key from a VFX artist and filmmaker and storyteller point of view. You don't want your tools to be distracting from the story. You want them to work with you towards telling a story. Here, it's happening. Very good. That slow-mo shot is so cool, like almost Baywatch-like. Wow. Let's go back to this shot again, and I'm sure it happens throughout. I really like this glitch effect. Look at that. It almost looks like one of those taped cameras, and I'm sure this is exactly what they wanted. They wanted to make it look like it was in the 80s. It actually looks like one of those cam recorders that used to have tape. I used to have one of those. This is how I actually started making videos. They used to always have distortions, bend-like distortion, exactly like this. This is top-notch. So if you look at this shot closer, it would suggest that maybe the cars are CGI'd, but not the bikes, because look at how he moves and the way he puts his hands. It doesn't look like there's any drifting or anything like that. So it looks like they actually had those bikes already made and just added any neon effect on top of it and animated it in whatever way they wanted in post. That's so cool. They have so many different 3D models. So you can see this is what I was talking about earlier. They have a bunch of 3D models, but this one, they don't actually make close-up of it. And you can see they don't have the same level of details on the textures. They don't have the same level of grunge and the same level of wear and tear, which is why they don't do any close-up, which is something that's clever to do. If you know that something is a little bit rough around the edges or you don't have time to spend on creating a high-resolution, massive model of a spaceship, you compose your shots in a way that don't need to have it front and center in your frame. You make it so that it's fairly far away, use the motion blur, and try and blend it this way. So look at the difference of details between this model and this model right here. Look, you can just see it in the light. The lighting is great. That was actually a really good shot. The way that the camera is blown out, it just sells the effect so well. But if you look at this guy, it doesn't have any details, and it's a flying spaceship, so you'd think you'd have some grime at the front from the pollution and stuff. You'd have some bugs on the windshield. You'd have a bunch of different stuff that you have here, but not here. That's such a Tron-like shot. Again, you can see the distortion on the texture on the road. So they actually paid attention to that. The reflections are really good, but they're a bit distorted by some kind of grunge texture on the road. That's the level of details that the spaceship doesn't have. And it's probably easier to do on a flat surface that repeats itself rather than on a high detail spaceship. I do think that from the level of detail I've seen so far on the cars, that the cars would be CGI, because otherwise, imagine you're actually filming a real car and you not only have to comp everything with the camera movement, and I think that's why they had the robotized arms so they could do the same takes over and over again, but you'd have to also comp the reflections on a real car, which I think would be too much of a pain. At that point, you might as well just do everything in CGI. Everything will interact with itself, and all you have to do is just comp a green screen element of someone singing. Ah, look at that. So I think I am right. I think the cars are CGI, because look at how his head is kind of looks like he's sticking out of the windshield. So finally I found something that doesn't look as amazing as the rest. And again, it's just something that you see so quickly that you'd have to pause it and nerd about it like I'm doing right now to even notice it. But if you look at the way that they cut out the singer's head, it almost looks like his head is poking out of the windshield and then sort of goes back in it like that. But look at that transition here. So it happens over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shots where the head sort of pokes out of the windshield and goes back in again. Here is blended very well, so there's ambient occlusion on his face and on his hair, which obviously happens because there's a roof on top, blocking any light from coming from the top, but you don't have that on that transition. Look at that. Finally, I found something to criticize, finally! So now if you put the head poking out the windshield aside, this shot looks really good. And it's actually so well done and so well composited and so well composed that the first time I watched it, I didn't even notice anything that was bad at first. Now that I can pause and look frame by frame, I can see that the textures are way too smooth on the car. There should be some grunge, there should be some wear and tear and things like that, just to distort the reflection. Now the reflections and the textures are way too smooth. But when I was watching it for the first time, I had no clue, and it takes someone to actually stop frame by frame to see it. So, you know, you'll get away with this, definitely. Oh, I love that. So, what do you think is CGI here? What do you think isn't? I believe the body is real, but the wheels and everything else isn't. The only reason why I think the wheels are CGI is because if you look at the reflection of this light on top of this wheel here, it's exactly how it should be. So it goes from the front here to the back, and it happens realistically. Whereas it doesn't really happen here. You have obviously an obvious light wrap, like a refraction that happens when you have lights behind you, just like you can probably see happening here. So you have that happening on the motorcycle, but you don't have that same level of reflection. So that to me suggests that the wheels and the body are on the same model. The body is real, so that Sam can actually interact with something, and the wheels have just been added later. It looks like the wheels have disappeared actually, look. Try and imagine the distance between the bottom of the rear and the top of the wheel. Try and imagine the distance here, and now look at that. The distance between this bit and the wheel. It looks like the wheel should be here almost, or like poking out a little bit, but it's almost like they were like, let's just crop the bottom of the video just so that we don't have to add any extra rendering, and then all they have to do is just remove the green screen and put something that goes fast and out of focus at the background, and Bob's your uncle. Again, and not everything has to be perfect. It's a music video, not a movie, not a massive production movie. So you get away with stuff like that. It does the job, the story is still told, and it looks amazing. I love the DragonForce track. Like, look at all the lights on the wheels, that's so cool. Alright, so this is where it starts to become a little bit more obvious and a little bit more rough around the edges. So you have those dots here on the wheels emitting some light, but you don't see any light being reflected on the bottom parts of the truck. So you should have at least some edge light just contouring whatever's underneath the chassis. You don't have that here. Again, the textures look way too smooth on the truck. You know, it's going through air, going through pollution. You should have a bit of grime, a bit of grunge, a bit of wear and tear. You see a little bit here, but it's not as high quality as you'd expect, especially after seeing that first 3D model with all those amazing details. The rest is really cool. I really like the neon logo here. The reflection is really good. It's just a shame about those little details. I feel like the shots are short enough that you don't have time to take in any details that are missing, but long enough that you take in the story and what happens and the purpose of each and every shot. And that's really clever actually, because you show something for long enough that you understand what's happening, but short enough that you don't see any mistakes here and there, or you don't see any lack of details in the 3D models or anything like that. That's quite clever. I love how he's supposedly driving this massive truck, but look at the size of the wheel, it's like tiny, you know, like a Mario Kart one. I suppose they only had like one fake dashboard in the studio and they were like using it for every single car and vehicles. We need to do the bike shot. We need to do the truck shot. We need to do the car shot. Actually, what I've said is true. They only have one fake wheel, and when he presses it to pretend that he's honking, the wheel actually moves. That's so funny. Look. Oh, that VHS star thing. Oh, I love it. Look how long it stays on Herman. There. Oh, and there's even like a drop in frame rate, which is such a good touch. Such a good idea. Wow. And I know that's what's probably happened is instead of having thousands and thousands of buildings, you just use like a handful of them, but rotate them so they look different. But if you think about the buildings, backgrounds, cars, the bikes, the wheels, the insides of the cars, the road splitting into two roads, the flying machine guns, the spaceship, the truck, everything in between, there's so many different 3D models involved. The lighting is on point. You must have taken ages to render. Well done! If you've worked on this video and for whatever reason you happen to watch this video, get in touch because I really want to learn more about this because it's so good. So many things to learn. Oh, again, hiring actors versus having band members. I think this shot is one of the epitome of it. It's just so funny, like, ooh. Oh wow, okay, I've just noticed something else. So this again confirms what I thought about the bike being real and the wheels being CGI. Look at this bit, like the little triangle of the stock element. As I move forward, it goes in front of the wheel, still in front of the wheel, still in front of the wheel, and still in front. It's still there. It's still at the front of the wheel. So it should have actually been rotoscoped out, not in. So it should actually now be behind Sam. At that point, it's past the motorbike, but we can still see it in front. Wow, this is actually quite bad. I suppose the fact that you have two shots happening side by side really helps with those details and just sort of hiding them a little bit. But it's quite funny that the rotoscoping didn't include the wheel. Oh, that end shot is so cool. So you have the drummer in the front of the truck, you have Sam, one of the guitarists, in the back of the truck on the motorbike, you have the two cars being the singer and Herman Lee, and you have the bassist at the top in the flying spaceship. That is so cool. And they're all driving and flying to the sunset, baby. That is so cool. So one of the things that's actually really good about this whole thing, if you take apart the comedy, if you take apart the little mistakes and stuff, every single shot has a purpose and it actually reflects the lyrics of the song. The song is called Highway to Oblivion and they're all driving and stuff and there's like a bit of fight and conflict, which is really clever. And I think that's what people should focus on. It's not so much the crazy visuals, the Godzilla-like musicians playing in the middle of the city and stuff like that, or the crazy cars drifting, or the flying spaceship, or the flying machine guns and stuff. It's how to use visual effects to tell a story, and then you add the fluff on top. I think they nailed it by sticking to the vibe of the song, sticking to the meaning of the lyrics, and then adding fluff on top, adding explosions, adding cool comedy things, adding little salutes. And from a storytelling point of view and filmmaking and VFX point of view, this is actually a very good piece. There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end, there's a relationship between the lyrics and the videos. It looks really well done. Well done to whoever made this. So this is my reaction and my thoughts on DragonForce music video for Highway to Oblivion. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something useful. If you enjoyed it and you didn't mind my accent, make sure you give this video a like, as it really helps with the algorithm. Also feel free to get subscribed and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. If you want me to react to and analyze any of the videos from the intraweb, just make sure to leave me a comment below because I'll make sure to check out every single one of them. Finally, if you're wondering what to watch next, I recommend you to watch this video right here. Thanks again for watching, my name is Francois, see you in the next video.